Hello people, another beautiful day. Yeah, hope your five senses work, health and strength is good or excellent. What? It's about 11:39 at night right now on a Saturday. But you know, tomorrow's Sunday, so gotta put some content out before I go to sleep. Anyway, what's up gamers? Got two articles here. One from Tweaktown and one from Tech for Gamers. Listen to this. Starfield exclusivity was the last straw. Microsoft led to 7.5 billion Zenimax buyout. But I'm gonna the other one from Tech for, I think it's from Tweaktown too. Yeah, this from both of them are from Tweaktown. Sorry about that. Both of them from Tweaktown. The other one is this. The other one is this. It says Xbox view PlayStation as a hostile competitor. But I got an illustration to explain both these articles. Let me get to them real quick. It says here, whoops. If I can get this. It says here, Starfield exclusivity was the last straw for Microsoft, led to 7.5 Zenimax buyout. Having already bought time exclusivity for two Bethesda games back to back, Microsoft bought Zenimax for 7.5 billion to stave off Sony hostile deals. And you know what? Nintendo plays a part in this too. It says here, see if I can get this. It says here, Sony has used its market leader position to negotiate exclusivity deals that block games from releasing on Xbox. Due to these deals, in which Sony pays companies to keep their games off Xbox, Microsoft leadership sees Sony as a hostile and aggressive competitor. That's why Microsoft fought back by purchasing Bethesda parent company Zenimax for 7.5 billion. And says here, Sony is no stranger to exclusivity deals. We've seen Sony make wide-sweeping deals that range from time to full-on exclusivity. Microsoft already missed out on the select Call of Duty content, with PlayStation receiving preferential treatment for in-game content and early access betas. That is true. Sometimes this exclusivity also makes a game skip Xbox, further weakening Microsoft's position and increasing costs for any exclusivity deals the company wants to offer. We've seen high-profile games like Final Fantasy VII Remake and the recent Final Fantasy XVI avoids Xbox entirely. That is true too. In recent FTC vs. Microsoft evidentiary hearing, Xbox Gaming CEO Phil Spencer gave rare insight into Microsoft business structure and rationale behind its recent acquisition, including the 7.5 billion Zenimax buyout and the proposed 68.7 billion offer for Activision Blizzard. In his testimony, Spencer outlined that the game industry is a hit-driven business and that continual missing out on third-party hits is detrimental to Xbox business. Having already been passed over for key games like Final Fantasy VII Remake and years worth of Call of Duty, Sony time exclusivity deal with Bethesda were the last straw. Sony had paid Bethesda for exclusivity for two back-to-back games released, Ghostwire Tokyo and Deathloop. In 2020, rumors surfaced that Sony was going to secure a deal to buy time exclusivity for Starfield. This means that Bethesda's biggest new RPG in 8 years or so would skip Xbox for an entire year. Says here, tired of being left out, Microsoft made the decision to offer to buy Zenimax, the parent of Bethesda ID Softworks, Arcane, and Tango Gameworks for 7.5 billion. Microsoft wanted to end these Bethesda exclusivity deal once and for all. Following the acquisition, Microsoft gave Sony a reverse UNO card and made Starfield exclusive to Xbox Series X/S and PC. Then it says in all black, when we acquired Zenimax, one of the impetus for that is that Sony had done a deal for Deathloop and Ghostwire to pay Bethesda to not ship those games on Xbox. The discussion about Starfield, when we heard that Starfield was potentially also going to end up skipping Xbox, we can't be in a position as a third place console where we fall further behind on our content ownership. So we had to secure content to remain viable in the business. Spencer had, as transcribed by The Verge Tom Warren. On the first day of the hearing, Zenimax heads of publishing Pete Hines explained the merits of exclusivity. Hines had said that exclusivity allowed developers to streamline the creation and production process of games, which reduced the amount of time spent on a project and allow more testing for bugs. And then it says here, you go to fewer platforms, your development gets more streamlined. It just needs to run as well as possible on Xbox. On PC, a narrow focus always helps. Hines said, streamlining development was literally the reason why I recommend exclusivity for Deathloop, Hines said. Elsewhere in his testimony, Spencer reaffirmed that what Zenimax Pete Hines had said about exclusivity, that it would be decided on a case-by-case basis. Remember that? When they bought Zenimax Bethesda? It says, I wanted to make it clear to the team, that their games they're building would at least be shipping on Xbox and PC. I had a discussion with Jamie that we were at least focused on those two platforms. Spencer said in response to the FTC lawyer James Garton, I announced that we made a decision on a case-by-case basis. We would leave the decision we would make for other platforms for a later date. Our team, First Party and Zenimax, understand that their games will ship on Xbox and PC, and other platforms will be decided at least later. While Zenimax Pete Hines can recommend exclusivity or multi-platform releases, Xbox Gaming CEO Phil Spencer is the authority on exclusivity and has the final say in whether or not a game goes full on Xbox exclusive. Yeah, that's what you call some power. Now, let's get to this other article here so I can get through this. It says here, Xbox views PlayStation as a hostile competitor. Microsoft Xbox sees Sony PlayStation as a hostile competitor, with Xbox Gaming CEO Phil Spencer outlined how Microsoft inadvertently funds its demise. It says here, Xbox Gaming CEO Phil Spencer say that PlayStation is a hostile competitor. It says here, the note taken here were transcribed via audio call and are not wholly representative of what was said, and there are paraphrases. It says here, Microsoft believes that Sony is a hostile competitor due to its myriads of exclusivity deals, which sees Sony buying up platform time exclusivity for big name games like Final Fantasy, Call of Duty. Spencer say that Sony outright pays developers to skip Xbox, a controversial business practice referred to as blocking rights. In a recent evidentiary hearing in the FTC versus Microsoft, Phil Spencer agreed that Sony is hostile to Xbox on survival, and that Microsoft is inadvertently funding Sony business model that helped weaken Xbox. Spencer explained. He said, I believe right now one of the biggest risks to Xbox survival is that Sony pays teams to keep content off Xbox. That is true. It says shipping games on PlayStation enables them to use the revenue they make from our content to sign third-party exclusive games to block games from our platform. They can use revenues from games we ship on their platform to block Xbox survival. I feel like I'm enabling an aggressive competitor to further our aspirations. Then he says, every time we ship a game on PlayStation, going back to the 70-30 split, Sony captured 30% of revenue that we do on their platform, and then they use that money among other revenues to do things to try to reduce Xbox survival on the market. below we have a quick Q&A transcript of Spencer's response. Note that these are paraphrases. Do you believe Sony PlayStation is hostile to Xbox survival? Yes. Question: is it fair to say you view Sony as an aggressive competitor? Sony is the market leader. Then it says in parentheses, paraphrase discussion about Sony penchant for third-party exclusivity deal, close bracket, it's an aggressive competitor. Then it says elsewhere in his testimony, Spencer goes to say that exclusivity is a constant conversation with the Xbox business. Exclusivity is seen as a weakness, and the FTC has done its best to construe this as evidence that Microsoft would choose to withhold. In the running the platform business, the Xbox business, the topic of exclusivity is something that we generally have to talk about. The Switch and PlayStation, they both have significantly higher numbers of exclusive. It talks about a weakness of our platform. And that is the end of both articles. Okay, now let's get down to business here. Sony, let me go back. Okay, the Dreamcast is 200 megahertz, right? The PlayStation 2 is 300. The GameCube is 485. The original Xbox is 733. The Dreamcast used a GD-ROM disc, 1 gig, PS2 4 gigs DVD disc, GameCube 1.1 gig of storage disc, mini disc, and Xbox uses a full-fledged on DVD disc. So when it came to Soul Calibur, Nintendo was a part of this conversation too. When it came to Soul Calibur, Soul Blade was in the arcade. Soul Blade came to PlayStation 1. But then when the Dreamcast came out, Soul Blade now turned into Soul Calibur. And it had more characters, more roster. And Soul Calibur 1 is an awesome game. So when it came to Soul Calibur 2 now, Sega is out of the console business. And then Soul Calibur 2, they had their own exclusive characters. And Soul Calibur is a popular game. So PS2 had Heihachi, Xbox had Spawn, and the GameCube had Link. Now, years ago, a couple years ago, I said that Soul Calibur. I said that Link Nintendo should have kept Link in Soul Calibur. Reason being that Soul Calibur was like here, right, when it comes to games, and it was very popular. But now when you add Link to Soul Calibur is up here. So what Nintendo should have done was keep Link in the Soul Calibur universe, because he deserved to. He belongs there. And he needed to be there. Nintendo should have kept Link there, and Nintendo should have told Namco, like, look, whenever you make Soul Calibur, we want our version with Link in it, because Link is our own personal character, right? We're not gonna stop Sony and Xbox from getting Soul Calibur, but we want we want to keep Link in the Soul Calibur universe. So when you make a new Soul Calibur, we get our own special copy like Soul Calibur 2, right? And that's what Nintendo should have done. So right after Soul Calibur 2, Nintendo did nothing, and they could have stopped Sony. So what Sony did now was cap it up, knowing that Soul Calibur was popular, and knowing that they were being beat console-wise, performance-wise, by the GameCube and the Xbox. The GameCube is 485, the PS2 is 300 megahertz. The PS2 is 300 megahertz, and the original Xbox is 733. So PlayStation know that they're getting beat hardware-wise by Xbox and GameCube. So what they did was went to Namco and made a deal with Namco, and then Namco made Soul Calibur 3 exclusive to Sony. So when Phil Spencer say now that Sony is a hostile competitor, he is right. Just look at the illustration of Soul Calibur. Nintendo had a chance to stop Sony in their tracks, and they did nothing. Nintendo did nothing. So once Nintendo didn't keep Link in the Soul Calibur universe, if Nintendo would have done that, then Sony could have never had Soul Calibur 3 to themselves. So Sony now capitalized off Nintendo's mistake for not keeping Link in the Soul Calibur universe, and they got Soul Calibur 3 to themselves, and then Xbox and Nintendo missed out on Soul Calibur 3, all because Nintendo didn't keep Link in the Soul Calibur universe, and they didn't tell Namco, like, look, when we want you to keep Link in the Soul Calibur universe. Whenever you make a new version of Soul Calibur, we want our own copy of that game with Link in it, because Link is our personal character. That's all they had to do. Once they didn't do that, then Sony capitalized off that and made a deal with Namco. So now Soul Calibur 3 was exclusive to PlayStation. Okay, so and then fast forward now to the Xbox One, when Sony had just got the rights to Spider-Man, and remember when the internet was making all the hoopla about that. Right after that happened, Sony had hit Xbox with back-to-back it was like 4 back-to-back time exclusive, and then on top of that, Street Fighter V also was exclusive to PlayStation. So when Phil Spencer sit here and says PlayStation is a hostile competitor, he is right. And then the other article now, when it says Zenimax Bethesda, and that was the final straw, Microsoft had to purchase Zenimax Bethesda to stave off PlayStation from getting all these time exclusive. But that's a part of the business. It's competition, so you have to do what you have to do to make sure your consoles, survive. So these two articles really explain, how Sony get all their exclusive games. Remember, right after Sony got the exclusive to Spider-Man, right? Final Fantasy, they had a time exclusivity. It was supposed to come to Xbox, but it never did, right? Then they put a time exclusive on. Then there was the Street Fighter V situation. Then there was the Modern Warfare 2 remake with the it didn't have the multiplayer, and then there was a few other games. That's Sony was doing that. So Microsoft now bought Zenimax Bethesda to counter what Sony was doing, and then they did the same thing with Activision Blizzard. Okay, so yeah, the name of the game is competition, man, and you have to do what you have to do to make sure your console survive in this business. So Phil Spencer, like the article says, which article here? Says Phil Spencer has the final say. He really does, And remember, they were like talking about dealing with games when they bought ZeniMax Bethesda. They were talking about dealing with games on a case-by-case basis. Oh yeah, Microsoft. Now Phil Spencer had to do what he had to do, okay, to keep Xbox alive, keep fresh content and games coming to that system. So, hey, they beat Sony to the punch with Activision Blizzard, and Sony ran to the CMA and the EU for help. And basically, Sony was they were trying to make Microsoft look like the villains, but now the flashlight, like I said weeks ago, it's on Sony, and they're being exposed for who they really are now in this video game industry. So yeah, this video game industry is competitive, man. So yeah, it's survival of the fittest, so to speak. So yeah, Phil Spencer is playing for keeps, and like the article says, he is the final say so. Phil Spencer is the authority and exclusivity. It says Xbox Gaming CEO Phil Spencer is the authority on exclusivity and has the final say in whether or not a game goes full on Xbox exclusive. Yeah, that is what you call power in the game industry. So yeah, they had to do. Phil Spencer had to do what he had to do, man. Yeah, and I've seen that up close, firsthand, especially when Sony had launched was launching the PlayStation 5, and they did their little PlayStation presentation. That following week, when they did This Week on Xbox, it was the longest This Week on Xbox I've ever seen. And that's when I know Phil Spencer was playing for keeps. So yeah, he had to do what he had to do, man. So yeah, but Sony is the aggressor here. They were trying to use the EU and the CMA to make Xbox look bad, and then the FTC, they jump in with their fake lawsuit. They really didn't even have a case, and they were trying to make Microsoft look bad. But now the flashlight is on PlayStation, so yeah, it's the game industry for you, man. Oh yeah. But other than that, man, other than that, yeah, the game competition is this video game industry is competitive, Valve and Take-Two are spectators in this, and they're learning a lot. Remember, when this thing started, you had the shareholders, 98%. You had the employees, and then you had countries, okay? And you had Valve and Take-Two, they're spectators, okay? Remember the countries they had? It was just what? Serbia, Chile, Saudi Arabia, and Brazil. Those were the main four. But now you got who? South Africa, Ukraine, you got China, Japan, you got Mexico, you got who else? Who else do you have? I think you got North South Korea. Oh yeah, you got China and Japan. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Man, this case is no joke, man. So I told you this was an endurance game. So yeah, Sony can't hide anywhere in this whole case. Microsoft versus the FTC. They can't hide. They're being exposed now for their big business practices. So yeah, and Phil Spencer is being aggressive now. He's not backing down. So yeah, they said they were ready to fight the FTC, and that's what these two articles are talking about, man. So yeah, that's the game industry for you, competition. Anyway, I'm gonna leave both articles in the description box. Hope you enjoyed the video. Nice talking to you people again. Chris, still a Star Wars, a Star Trek thing, or Dark Side. Peace.